Letecia Stauch, the woman accused of murdering her 11-year-old stepson, has again been deemed competent to stand trial. Stauch's case was on pause, pending a review of her initial competency evaluation conducted by the state hospital last year. That evaluation found her competent, but the defense moved for an independent assessment with a doctor of their choosing. This week, the court deemed Stauch competent after the psychiatrist retained by the defense came to the same conclusion as the state's examiner. That means after more than 6 months of delay, Stauch's case is back on track. Letecia Stauch reported her stepson Gannon missing from his Colorado Springs home on January 27, 2020. Stauch told investigators that Gannon never returned home after playing with his friends. Police opened a missing person investigation while the community took action to try to bring Gannon home.
Whatever we could do just to show them that we're thinking of them and, they're in our thoughts and prayers.
Investigators examined countless phone, GPS, and home security records and a surveillance video from a neighbor's home.
It just didn't seem right the way she was talking. Okay. If my child is missing, I'm gonna face the camera and talk to you. That you see the pain in my face.
Search warrants uncovered blood matching Gannon's DNA in his room and in the garage near Leticia's car. And the evidence was enough for an arrest. 2 weeks later, Gannon's remains were found in Florida, about 15 miles north of Pensacola. Letecia Stauch is presumed innocent, and according to the arrest affidavit, she has a story. She told investigators Gannon was abducted by a Hispanic man named Eduardo, who took Gannon at gunpoint after sexually assaulting Letecia inside the family's home. That's a story investigators don't believe. Now that Letecia Stauch is competent to stand trial, she's scheduled for a 2-day preliminary hearing on March 11th and 12th.
All right, it was a long road, but you have to be competent. You can't just put anyone on trial. I mean, we've got a constitution and defendants have rights. Let's bring in Court TV anchor Julie Grant with more on all of this. And that issue of competency, to determine it, you've got to sit down, you've got to speak with the defendant, you've got to hear them, because they've got to understand everything that's going on. Here's my question.
That's exactly right.
Here's my question, though. Have we ever heard her speak? Letecia Stauch, speak publicly?
That's a good question. I do have an answer for you on that one. Yes, we have, Vinny. Yes, we have heard Letecia Stauch speak publicly. She gave an interview to a local television station in Colorado Springs. It was on January 31st, 2020. At the time, her stepson Gannon was still missing. And in the interview she gave, and you'll see a little clip from it in just a moment, but she has her back turned to the camera. So really you just see the back of her head and her hair is being shown as she's speaking with that KKTV reporter. And in this clip, she talks about various issues in the interview. But in this clip, I've zeroed in on a portion where she speaks to the issues that fall under the umbrella of competency. So what's competency about? It's about understanding the nature of the proceedings against you and being able to assist in one's own defense. So to your point, Vinny, that's why we have forensic psychologists talking with defendants to try to make that competency determination. And so here in this clip you're about to see, she's talking with the reporter from KKTV saying that she claims that her constitutional rights were violated when she spoke with detectives. Let's watch.
I asked for an attorney during the interview, and I was denied that by them. I was held because they were blocking the door, and I was told I couldn't leave, and that if I would have touched them, they would have probably, said I still wasn't complying or said I was, trying to run away or something. But during the interview, I asked several times, could I stop the interview? Could I get an attorney? Could I stop the interview? Could I get an attorney? I was denied. I was told I couldn't get nothing to drink. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I mean, it was continuously that my constitutional rights were violated.
Wow. So we picked this as an example because at that moment in time, she appeared not only competent, but to have a very good grasp of her constitutional rights and how the criminal procedure process, unfolds when you're in an interview room with detectives. There's a question of whether someone is being detained and not free to go or free to leave, and what rights are kicked in when someone asks for an attorney. So it's very, very impressive how aware she is of the situation and the process. But it also is important to note when we're talking about competency, and I know you know this, Vinny, it's ever changing. just because Letecia Stauch was competent on January 31st, 2020, when she did that interview with KKTV, doesn't mean that she remained competent in the following days. So it can change. And it's also a very, very, very low threshold for competency. So what she exhibited there, that was impressive, really understanding what's going on and feeling like, hey, I need an attorney. I don't feel free to leave. This questioning perhaps is in violation of my rights as an American citizen. So in that clip, she looked very competent. And as we know, the judge has said she is competent today and ready to have her case proceed.
Yeah, also fascinating to hear her affect as well. And I'm wondering if that interview ends up being part of the evidence in the trial. I mean, it could be because she's telling a story, right? And that's part of this case, is that they're alleging there are several different stories that she gives about what happened. Now, she's also requested a conflict hearing. What do we know about that?
Right. And we don't know a lot about this, unfortunately, Vinny. We don't even know the nature of this conflict that she's alleging. So she's made this request to the court, and we know that there's no date set for that yet. So there will be a hearing. It'll be closed to the public, mainly because we expect that confidential information is going to be put forth on the record. So who knows who this conflict is pertaining to? For example, it could be that perhaps there's a conflict with her attorneys. We don't know that for sure, but I'm just saying, as an example, there could be a conflict. We have two public defenders representing her, and you never know if there was some case or something in the past history where they would have her as a client today and realize, oh, because of past representation of someone connected to her or some other issue, one may have to remove oneself from a case. It happens all the time, but we're not going to be privy to that whenever it happens, and no date is set yet for that. But we'll be watching it, and we'll see, and it will be noticeable if she does have new attorneys going forward, and then it'll be evident that that was what the conflict was about. But at this point, unfortunately, we don't know.
All right, so now that she's been deemed competent and we're moving forward after kind of being stalled for a while. I know it's a very complicated case. There's tons of discovery and documents and locations, et cetera. Is there any sort of a time frame that's been put on this case now?
That's another great question. And even though it feels like we've been talking about this case for such a long time, she hasn't even gotten to the preliminary hearing stage yet. And we know that to be some of the earliest proceedings we see in criminal cases. And so now we know the next time Letecia Stauch is due in court, it'll be March 11th and 12th. They've set aside 2 full days to do the preliminary hearing. And that'll be when the state will present evidence to try to make sure there is enough for the court to hold the first-degree murder charge as well as the other lower level charges, for trial. So that'll be the big determination that'll be made. And then the other thing we'll see addressed, Vinny, is bond. We can expect her attorneys to ask the court for bond. If, let's just say, the judge says, okay, we find there's enough here. Because again, we know the burden at the preliminary hearing level is also very, very low, like the competency standard. So we can expect this case will probably move on past that level and be set on the docket for trial. And then we can see if they will grant her a bond. My gut is a big no on that one, given the severity of the charges and everything that is being alleged here. But stranger things have happened, as you know. And just want to point something out, too, as we're looking at the calendar. I mean, we're into the new year, and January 27th will be the date. So we're coming up on the anniversary of when Gannon Stauch was last seen. So certainly I'm sure his family is very happy to have this news of the competency, those who are advocating for him and for justice for this precious little boy who was gone way too soon. They're going to be remembering him on that anniversary. And of course, we're going to be watching to see this case all the way through, Vinny.
Absolutely. And again, this is not going to be an easy case for prosecutors, because you have so many different places where Gannon's body was allegedly left. First in Colorado, and then it was somehow transported from Colorado all the way down to Pace, Florida. Letecia Stauch is with family in South Carolina when she gets arrested. So there's a lot of things they've got to put together. We'll continue to keep our eyes on it. Julie Grant, Court TV anchor, have a great weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vinny. You as well.